Hello and welcome to my book review of The Last Breath Before Death. This is a novel by Alan Golbourn. Hope I've said that right, Alan. This is his fourth novel, and the copyright date is 2024. I would like to say a big thank you to Alan for providing me with an ebook copy to read and review. I've also enjoyed our email interactions, which helped in terms of clarifying the story a bit, and in particular, the character of Jimmy. That is a definite perk to reading works and being able to connect with the authors to say, yeah, I'm not too sure about this character, and then getting the answer back of why they're written that way, which definitely is a nice bonus. So thank you so much, Alan, for clarifying about Jimmy, both in the author's notes at the back of the work as well as answering my questions in the emails. The novel itself includes an ancient relic. There's an ancient group of creatures that we learn about. There are family dynamics. There's travel between 3 different countries. We have a psychic. There's a lot of really interesting things to this work. One spoiler, our main character, Jimmy, does have a cat named Coulson, and Coulson does stay in New York. Also, through the story, and many fur owners can relate to this, Jimmy does check in to see how Coulson is doing. Coulson is staying with a friend of his, and Jimmy sees that Coulson is quite content, safe, and happy. Of course, as a pet owner, yes, you feel very relieved that your fur kid is doing well, being well taken care of, but you're also a bit sad because you're missing them and they're doing okay without you. Yes, I got briefly distracted by the red in my hair. If you've been here before, it doesn't take long. Sorry. So our story starts in New York, and we meet Jimmy, our main character. He's a freelance reporter. He's in his early 30s. He's a smoker with asthma who uses an inhaler. Yes, that is important to note because it comes up throughout the story. Jimmy's reporting work focuses on the supernatural. He's beginning to look into a case where the house is supposedly haunted. The family name is Holbrook, and it definitely has Amityville horror vibes to it. Even if you haven't looked much into the paranormal, I'm sure this house is familiar. There have been books and movies, so you get a sense of what may be going on with the Holbrooks. Jimmy finds out that a paranormal investigation team is going to check out the property. They have a psychic on their team. Jimmy decides to go check out the house himself and see if he can find anything out about this psychic. The family has since vacated the property. While Jimmy's at the location, he meets Walter, the psychic from the team. They begin having a conversation, and Walter does a reading for Jimmy later on, and Jimmy realizes he may be the real deal. Just as a side note, unlike many of these grifters on social media, Walter throughout the book is not like those people. After Jimmy has had a conversation with Walter, he finds out from his mother that his brother Quentin and Quentin's friend Riley have gone missing in Germany. They were tracking down some information about an ancient relic. They've been missing for several days, and it's difficult to find out anything about them because they weren't staying in hotels. They had gone to a small town and were actually going through the woods and camping. So that's made things rather difficult. Once Jimmy has Coulson settled with a friend and he heads off to the United Kingdom, we see a change in Jimmy for the remainder of the story. In the first part, we learn quite a bit about Jimmy, and it did make me wonder about his credibility as an investigator and a reporter of the supernatural. But once he's involved in the case, he becomes very different. And yes, I did chat with Alan about that through the emails, and there is a bit more information about Jimmy in the author's note at the end of the book, which was very helpful. Jimmy connects with his mother once he gets to the United Kingdom, and they stay at Quentin's house while he's looking into things about, where to even try and find his brother and Riley. An unnamed man approaches him and shares some information about an ancient group, gives him the name of a town and an individual to look for that Quentin and Riley may have been searching to find out more information about. Walter has also been in touch with Jimmy. He's had different visions and impressions, so his sense is that Quentin and Riley are still alive, but they're very much in danger and time is running out. Jimmy then decides to head to Germany because the police have cut back on the search. They've had very few leads. They know that they've been out in the woods and camping, so it's a huge area to try and figure out what may have happened. And of course, because there are wild animals in the area, they're not sure if they're even going to find them. Jimmy decides to head to the small town in Germany, which is the closest thing they have to a clue and trying to find out what's happened to his brother and Riley. While he's there, he makes a connection with two of the police officers. Jimmy goes into the woods with the police and they come upon a building. They meet an individual named Sinisa. He's a Serbian hunter. And yes, some of that scene does have some graphic details, just so you know. Sinisa tells them that yes, he did see Quentin and Riley a little while ago, but he has no idea where they were headed, and he is planning to leave the area the next day. Jimmy and the police head back into the village, and the chief decides to leave a lookout to keep an eye on Sinisa and to make sure that he is actually leaving the area. Things, of course, do not go well. We learn a bit about Sinisa and his food choices. Yes, there is some gruesome graphic detail, just so that you're aware, much like in the Demonologist. So just be mindful of that. And the story, of course, continues to progress from there. Jimmy now knows it's a race against time. Jimmy and his brother Quentin are not close. They've had a falling out a number of years ago, but Quentin is still his brother, and Jimmy is very much invested in trying to find him, along with his friend Riley. We've got a race against time. We've got an ancient relic, an ancient group of creatures, shall we say. We have this individual, Sinisa, who ties in with the ancient creatures. We have this unnamed man who has been trying to help Jimmy as best he can, but he also has to be careful because of these creatures. So the big questions become, will Jimmy find his brother in time? What and who are these ancient creatures? And how are they tied in with Sinisa? To find the answers to those questions, you'll have to read the book, The Last Breath Before Death. A few additional points to add about the story. I have mentioned that yes, there is some graphic detail about some of the scenes. So if you have read books like The Demonologist, which I've reviewed, and other stories where you get some graphic detail with your horror. Just be mindful of that. There is also a lot of dialogue in this book. As far as reading the story, it helps put you into it, I found, and you feel like you're in the room even though you're not part of the conversation. But if you're someone who isn't into reading a lot of dialogue, just be mindful of that as well. The thing that I very much appreciated at the end of this novel, and I've only seen it in Dan Simmons prior to this, is a list of all the resources that Alan used. To me, the resources at the end of a novel is a nice touch because it means you can look further into some of the things that come up in the novel itself. I very much appreciate that. I enjoyed it with Dan Simmons' The Terror because I began looking further into the Franklin expedition, which is something I've been interested in for a long time. I enjoyed it in this particular work as well. I'll be looking up some of the information from the back of the book, so thank you so much for including that, Alan. I also did mention to Alan that as of this year, I no longer give books a number rating. To me, it's so subjective. It depends on when you've read the book, what else is going on at the time that you're reading it, what were your expectations going into it. So I don't do numbers. My gauge for whether I'm going to pick up a book or not is first and foremost, is it something I'm looking for and a genre that I'm interested in? Two, have I heard other people talking about it? What were their thoughts and ideas? Overall, I enjoyed The Last Breath Before Death, so a big thank you to Alan for writing that work. To learn more about Alan, you can find him on Amazon and on Goodreads and find out what other people are saying about his work as well. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of Alan's novels to date and what were your thoughts. Until next time, remember, it may be pretty and shiny and have an interesting backstory, but it's always safer to learn about them in books than going to travel around. Be safe, be well, and big hugs.